Hello and welcome back to the channel, everybody. I am your host, Vortex from MobileMusicPro.com, your home for mobile music production. And if you are new to the channel, what we do here is release weekly videos teaching people how to produce music on their iOS device. And in today's video, we're going to be showing you some tips and tricks on how to use one-shots inside of Cubasis 3 right after this. And remember folks, if you do enjoy this content, please make sure to like, subscribe, and comment down below. Now, what exactly is a one-shot? Well, usually this term is referred to a short audio sample that is not designed to loop. These can most obviously include drum sounds, but they can also include single notes of instruments such as pianos or synthesizers that you can then import into your DAW or sampler and play across your entire keyboard. This can make for a much different workflow experience than just using a regular VST and can often yield much more unique results because of that, especially when you're applying some of the tips and techniques that you'll learn in today's video. And finally, you might be asking yourself, where can you find some of these one-shot sounds? Well, we just released a brand new one-shot pack called Myriad containing hundreds of different one-shot sounds that you can import into your sampler. Plus, we have a ton of free essential sample packs that all include a bunch of different one-shot sounds. And you can find all of those different packs available at MobileMusicPro.com. Alright, and now with that intro aside, let's hop right into Cubasis and start experimenting with some of these one-shot sounds. But real quick, we just thought that it was important to mention that all of the tips and techniques found in today's video can be applied to basically any DAW on any platform. For today's video though, we will be using Audio Layer by Veerson and SampleWiz 2 by Blease, in addition to the stock MiniSampler found inside of Cubasis. But there's of course also a ton of other sampler apps available for iOS as well, including Segments, Chameleon, Koala, and much more. Now we're going to assume that you already know how to import your audio and MIDI files inside of Cubasis, as we did do a full tutorial video on that previously on the channel. Alright, so now let's go ahead and get into our very first tip. Alright, and the very first tip that we'll be discussing today is tuning. Now it's very important to know the key of your sample. We actually did a full tutorial video of how to find the key of your sample in a previous video as well on the channel, so make sure you check that out too. But for now, let's just do a quick recap. Now we use a couple of different apps to find the key of our sample, but one of them is Audio Layer. So if we open up Audio Layer here, we can see that we already have a sample loaded. And to find the key, we click on where it says Zone. And you can see that this particular zone by default is C1 all the way to B8, which is pretty much your entire keyboard. But most notably over here, this is where you'll find your key. You can see here that Audio Layer says that the root key for this particular sample is C3. Now, though that is 100% accurate for this sample, it's not exactly accurate for every single sample. So you still want to always try to use your ear as much as possible. And then there is another sampler app that we use to detect a key, and that is called Segments. And that is by Elliott Garage. You can see we have that pulled up here. And once you do have the sample already loaded up, you will find the key right here in the top of the screen. And you can see that Segments is detecting the key of this sample as C, which again is 100% correct because all of the samples that we'll be using today is coming from our Myriad sample pack, and all of those samples are tuned to C. And that's because most samplers by default assume that the sample is tuned to C. Otherwise, you have to do some manual pitch correcting, which we'll get into in just a little bit. But if you find that these apps still aren't that accurate, there is one more that we can choose, and that is going to be 4Pockets Analyzer. And we can put that right on the mixer on our master track. So we'll just pull up Analyzer here. And what we do is we click on Presets. We'll scroll down here to where it says Tuner. And I like to up the averaging usually somewhere around 8 to 16x. And now when we send some audio through it, it should detect the key. And that is correct. That is C. Let's try G. Alright, perfect. But again, if all else fails, including these apps and this tuner, it's always good to still try to use your ears as much as possible. Technology, of course, can be great, but you definitely don't want to use it as a crutch if you can help it. And next up, I'd like to discuss the MiniSampler found inside of Cubasis 3. Now, once again, we do already have a full tutorial video on this subject, but let's just do a quick recap once again. So we have our first track here. So what we're going to do is we're going to choose the instrument, and we're going to go to the MiniSampler. And we're going to create our new instrument by tapping on New Instrument. And we can just give that a name real quick. Test instrument. Okay, there we go. We'll tap on OK. And now what you want to do is tap on the Edit button at the bottom of the screen. And it's here where we can start loading up our samples. So we're going to go to the Import tab on the top left-hand side of the screen. And I've already navigated to a folder with a bunch of one-shots here, so let's just load up the first one. And you can always audition these sounds to hear what they sound like by tapping on the Autoplay button. Now I believe that the sampler detected this as C3, so what we're going to do is we're going to tap on this and drag it down to C3. Now right now, only that one key will play the sample. So to get this sample to be played across the keyboard, we're going to drag this across, maybe down to C2. Typically I drag this down to C1. We'll drag this all the way to C4. You can always expand or contract your view of the keyboard with the keyboard viewer right here. Let's just make this a little bit bigger by dragging this out. There we go. Now we can easily drag this all the way to C1. Now we should be able to start playing this on our keyboard. Alright, perfect. But there's also a couple of extra things that you can do too. For example, if we go to the edit here and tap on our key to bring up our sample once again, you can do a few things in here like reverse, normalize, fade in and fade out. A lot of times it's typical for people to tap on the normalize button to make the sound a little bit louder. And you can adjust the gain on the left by just turning that down a little bit. And there you go. And now it shouldn't be too loud. Now let's take a look at our envelope settings and adjust our ADSR. So to do that, we'll simply close the window. And that will bring up our MiniSampler options right here. And you can see that the screen is separated into two main sections here in the center, which is the attack at the top, and then the polyphony at the bottom. Now inside of the envelope, we have these two settings called attack and release. And these can make drastic differences to your sounds. So let's first show you what the attack does. So for example, if we just strike the keys right now, you can see that the sound does play right away. But if we adjust the attack a little bit here to the left, maybe to around 0.6 or 0.7 seconds, the sound won't play right away and it'll take a second to come in. And you can adjust this all the way to the left if you'd like to get even more attack. When you strike the keys now, it almost sounds like a pad. So definitely a drastic difference from when we had the attack set to 0. Now another big setting that comes into play here is going to be the release. And the release is going to determine how long your sound is going to play. So if we make this all the way to 0, it's just going to play almost nothing. You're going to hear the sound play super fast. Not much there. But if we adjust this release, then it can play a little bit more every time we strike the key. And then we can push this all the way to the right here. And then the release will let the sound play all the way out. So just messing with this attack and release can definitely make drastic changes to your sound. And then underneath that, we have the polyphony, which determines how many sounds can be played at a time. So right now we have this at 128, which means that 128 sounds or 128 voices can play simultaneously. So basically what that means is you can play chords or multiple keys at once. But if we adjust this all the way to 1, which you typically do for bass sounds, so that one sound doesn't bleed into the other, you can hear what that sounds like now. You can see that I can't strike more than one note at once. It will only play one single note. And again, that's typically used for bass sounds and sub-bass sounds like 808s. But let's move this back up and adjust the release a little bit, adjust the attack just a bit, and you can get a pretty nice sound. Whereas the default sound again would sound a little bit more just like this. You can see with that fast attack, we can play many notes really quickly in succession. So no matter what sample that you're using, make sure that you do dial in your attack and release so you can get the exact sound that you're looking for. Now once you do have your sound loaded up, the next step is to start adding different effects. Now those can be the stock plugins that come with your DAW or third-party plugins that you've purchased or downloaded for free. And Cubasis does come with a ton of awesome stock sounds. So let's just start applying a few here to this sound. So again, here's the sound just by itself. And after that, we can add a reverb, and then a chorus, and a phaser, and a delay. So you can just really take any stock one-shot sound that doesn't have a whole lot of processing on it and really start going to town with these effects to both customize it and make it sound really amazing. Now again, those were just the stock effects, but we have a couple of third-party effects that we can apply here too, like for example these two completely free plugins from Baby Audio called Magic Switch and Magic Dice. And let's hear what that sounds like. So definitely a much more in-depth sound than just using that one shot alone by itself. And please guys, don't sleep on these stock plugins inside of your DAW. Not everybody can afford multi-$100 plugins, and the ones that come with your DAW are actually usually much better than you might think. But if you can afford it, slapping a few third-party plugins like guitar amplifiers can really make your one-shots sound great. For example, we have a bass one-shot loaded up here, and then we have the Black Eyes Gamma going over the top of it. And then here on another guitar sample, one of our electric guitar one-shot samples, we have over the top of it a Nembrini BG Ecstasy. So as you can hear, you can definitely get rocking and rolling there by applying some plugins over the top of these one-shot samples. Alright, and the next tip that we're going to be talking about is using the effects in your sampler. Now as you saw, the basic MiniSampler built into Cubasis 3 doesn't have a whole lot of extra options and effects beyond just those envelope settings and polyphony settings. But there are a bunch of AUV3 sampler apps on iOS that do have those more traditional settings and effects built in. I'd like to show you a couple of those now, with the first one being SampleWiz from Blease. Now if we pull up SampleWiz here, we can just click on the icon and let's make this full screen. Now the first thing that I do want to do is load up a quick sample, the same one that we've been using so far in this project. Once you have that selected, it loads right up here in the center of the screen and you can just immediately start playing that. Alright, now right away there are a few options right here on the sample page that I'd like to go through that will give you some more creative options for your one-shots. And again, a lot of these settings can be found in most samplers, both on iOS and desktop. So the first thing I'd like to mention is the reverse option. So that's a great option for changing the sound of your one-shot. So we'll tap on the reverse, and you can see that immediately reverses the sample. But you might not be able to hear anything when you play on your keyboard because we are starting at the very end. So we're going to have to adjust the start and end positions here. So if we bring in the start, bring that all the way closer so we can hear something. And again, we can bring this in as close or as far as we'd like. But definitely a different sound and tone than when we first started with. So let's quickly undo that now, reverse this back, and set our start all the way to the beginning. And another tip is, even when this is not reversed, adjusting that start position can really change the sound of your one-shot as well when you play it across the keyboard. So here we have the regular sound starting out at the beginning. We can adjust that. So definitely make sure you mess around with this start position here to get a little bit more of a customized sound out of your one-shot sample. Now, if your sample isn't already tuned to C, you can definitely manually adjust that with the tune knob here to get that to be just right so that the keys line up correctly on your keyboard. Now, all of these samples that we have, especially in our Myriad sample pack, are all going to be tuned to C already for you. Now, another cool thing to do is to loop your samples. Sometimes you can get interesting sounds out of that. So for example, we have our loop modes here. If we change this to the second loop mode, we can now just hold down a key and it'll start looping for us. But first, let's adjust our loop positions here. So I don't want to loop the whole thing. I want to start looping right around here. And if you just start holding down the key and adjusting this position, you can hear that length change. Until there's no sound at all. Well, you can definitely adjust that and get some creative results though, for sure. It almost sounds like one of those 8-bit video game sounds. Very, very cool. So a bunch of different effects that you can get from just looping your sample as well. And now if we switch over to the General tab, we have a bunch more options to choose from here. Now, first off, just like the Cubasis MiniSampler, we can adjust how many voices we'd like to use. But unlike the MiniSampler, you can also adjust the glide and pitch bend. And this works really great for bass sounds, especially like 808s, when you want to start pitch bending those. But let's turn this off for now and go to our next setting, which is vibrato. Vibrato is a great way to add some extra sauce onto your sound. So let's add some vibrato amount. There we go. So adjusting the glide and vibrato, very cool settings to add to your one shot. Another great way to modify your one shot is to add an arpeggio. And you can adjust the rate of that just like any sampler here, and adjust if that's going up or down or both. So a very cool and handy feature to modify your sound with. We'll just turn that off for now. And of course, every sampler should have an effects as well. Built into this sampler is the delay and reverb. So let's turn both of those on and start adjusting. And now we should be able to filter down our sound with the mod wheel. So a much softer sound and a much softer tone there when you start dialing in that filter. Definitely make sure you don't sleep on all of these additional settings on the sampler and whatever DAW that you use. No matter the sampler that you use, you're going to find a ton of options like these, and the best way to learn is just to play with them. Alright, and the final technique that we'll be discussing in today's video on how to use one-shots inside of Cubasis 3 is going to be to reuse your one-shots. Now, what do we mean by reusing your one-shots? Well, let's take a look here. So what I have is the exact same sound loaded up into each one of these tracks using the SampleWiz sampler. It is the exact same sound, but they are all processed differently. So we're using the exact same sound to create a bass, arpeggio, chords, a chord stab, and finally the lead. So let's listen to what these tracks sound like one by one, and then we'll bring in the drum loop at the very end. So first, let's listen to what the original sound sounds like. Play that one more time. So again, we use that sound to create all these individual sounds. So let's first hear the bass sound that we created. All right, very cool. Next up, we created an arpeggio sound. Let's hear what that sounds like. All right, very pretty. Next up, we created a chords sound. Now let's listen to the chord stab. And then we'll do the lead, and then we'll throw in some drums and play this all together. And now let's hear the lead sound on top of that. So So again, all incredibly different sounding sounds, all made from that same single one-shot. So now let's hear all of these together with some drums. All right, perfect. So hopefully you can see how much you can do there with just one single sound. Again, the bass sound, the arpeggio, the chords, the chord step, and the lead was all made out of the same sound, but processed differently. And then finally, I just want to take 1 minute to go through our brand new one-shot sample pack called Myriad. This pack is going to come with over 400 sounds in a bunch of different categories. So let's just take a quick look. So as you can see, we have drums, FX, instruments, pads, percussion, synths, and textures. But then there's subfolders in here as well. So inside of instruments, we have a bunch of different instruments in here like the organ, piano, guitars, and so on. And then in these synths, we have synth leads, basses, just the basic sounds, even some additional lo-fi sounds, and of course some plucks. So a bunch of different sounds as you can see in here. We could play a few of these for you. We even have some amazing textures as well. Let's just play a couple of these. So very cool and interesting sounds that you can morph into whatever you'd like. Then of course we have all the contemporary stuff as well, like these synth sounds. We can play a couple of these. And we also have some drums in here as well. We can play a couple drums. Got a couple kicks in here. So really high quality sounds. They've all been processed to make sure that they sound as good as possible. And again, you can find this one-shot pack as well as many other sample packs on our website at MobileMusicPro.com. You can see this Myriad one-shot pack does come with over 400 one-shots and over 800 megabytes total. And all of these samples have been tuned to C automatically for you, ready to go. So you can just drop those in your sampler. So whether you need these one-shot sounds, or maybe some MIDI packs, or maybe some melody packs, or even some free guides, whatever you need, we have it available for you at MobileMusicPro.com. All right, and now it's time for our final thoughts. And if you are still rocking with us, then we just can't thank you enough for being here, especially those folks that are here every single Wednesday and Friday to watch our live streams and our live premieres. Now, we really hope that this video demonstrated the near endless possibilities of using one-shots, and how they can really become a cheat code, especially if you find good samples and enjoy the workflow. Hopefully you can see now that one-shots just aren't for drum sounds, and can really prove to be a valuable resource in defining your own sound. As with anything in music, you can kind of take ideas to whatever extremes you want, and in fact, I know some producers that only use one-shots in their productions, just to give you an idea of the spectrum. And I really hope that you're using some of the one-shots, or really any of the sounds in our brand new metal sample pack to submit your original production in our brand new sample pack contest. The March 22nd deadline is coming up pretty fast and is now only less than a week away. For further rules, details, and prizes, make sure to visit our website at MobileMusicPro.com/contest. And of course, we always have a ton more content coming your way, folks, so if you do want to keep up with everything that the channel is doing over here, from podcasts, the live streams, the contests, sample packs, and more, definitely head over to our website and sign up for our completely free newsletter at MobileMusicPro.com/newsletter. And so, until next time, everybody, keep talking music, and we'll see you later. Hey everybody, Vortex here, and if you're not aware yet, we now have over 100 fully edited mobile music tutorial videos. And we make music every single Wednesday live on our channel right inside of Cubasis on our iPad. Plus, we also have a bunch of free sample packs, guides, and more at our website at MobileMusicPro.com/free. And so if you are into that sort of thing, producing music on your iPhone or iPad, then definitely make sure to subscribe and check out the rest of the videos on the channel that we know you'll love.